I always thought Christmas was the one day nobody could be cruel. Even when the rest of the year was marked by silence or tension, Christmas had always been sacred. The tree glowing in the corner, the smell of roasted ham or turkey filling the house, the sound of carols floating from the old radio. It was Maria's favorite holiday, before she passed. And I'd promised myself that I'd carry the tradition for as long as I had breath left. So when my son, Daniel, asked me to come over for Christmas dinner this year, I didn't think twice. Of course I would come. Of course I'd bring my famous pecan pie, the one his father had adored, the one Daniel always asked for as a boy. I even bought a new red sweater, soft wool, because I wanted to look festive for the grandchildren. That's why his words cut so deep. "Mom," he said, avoiding my eyes, "maybe it's better if you don't come this year." At first, I thought he was joking. My Daniel, the boy who used to cling to my apron strings, who cried when I left him at school his first day, who once said he could never imagine Christmas without me. "What do you mean?" I asked, setting the pie tin on his spotless granite countertop. The kitchen smelled faintly of citrus cleaner, expensive and sterile, nothing like the homey scent of cinnamon and cloves I'd always filled our house with. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. He was standing beside Lauren, his wife, who perched on one of the bar stools with a glass of white wine. She didn't even look at me when she spoke. "My parents are coming this year. They prefer things a certain way. It might be awkward with too many people." "Awkward?" I repeated, feeling my throat tighten. "I'm your mother. How could my being here be awkward?" Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, his wedding band flashing under the kitchen lights. "Mom, it's just. Lauren's parents have certain traditions. They like quiet, they don't really appreciate your kind of cooking," Lauren cut in smoothly, her tone as sharp as her diamond earrings. I stared at her, words failing me. My kind of cooking. The very meals that had kept Daniel fed through college, the casseroles I used to freeze when he was too broke to buy groceries, the food I'd made with my own hands while working double shifts so he wouldn't go hungry. I looked around their house, the grand piano no one played, the leather sectional that looked untouched, the wall-to-wall hardwood floors. All of it gleamed, polished to perfection. All of it had a little piece of me in it. Because I had paid for it. The down payment when Daniel and Lauren bought the house, the car in the driveway, even the private school tuition for the kids, they'd all been funded by checks that came from me. Retirement savings I'd poured into them because I thought family meant sacrifice. And now they wanted me gone. Lauren finally turned her head, her expression polite but cool. "It's not personal. We just want a certain atmosphere for the holidays. You understand, don't you?" No, I didn't. I didn't understand how a mother could be shut out of her own family's Christmas. I didn't understand how the money I sent every month was welcome, but my presence was not. I swallowed hard and asked, "So where am I supposed to go?" Daniel's eyes flickered, shame tugging at him for just a second. "Maybe Aunt Lila's? Or, we could do something after New Year's. Just the two of us. After New Year's. Like Christmas was a doctor's appointment that could be rescheduled for convenience." I set my hands on the countertop, steadying myself. My gaze landed on the sleek espresso machine I'd bought them last year when they insisted their old coffee maker wasn't good enough for entertaining guests. $2,000, sitting pretty on the counter, and not once had they thought about how many shifts I'd had to work to afford it. "I see," I whispered. My voice was calm, but inside, something was splintering. I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door, ignoring Daniel's weak attempt to stop me. "Mom, wait." "No," I said without looking back. The December air stung as I stepped outside. Behind me, their laughter returned, muted through the walls of the house I'd helped pay for. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the glowing windows. I could still hear Maria's voice in my head, warm and steady. "Don't let them take advantage of you, Clara. You have worth." But I had let them. 4 years. I told myself it was love, sacrifice, family duty. Now, staring at the cold suburban street, I realized something. They didn't want me. but they wanted my money. That, I thought bitterly, they had always welcomed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Daniel. Mom, please don't take it the wrong way. We'll see you soon. Love you. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then I pressed delete. As I drove away, the plan began to form, quiet and certain. They thought they could exclude me but keep my money flowing? They had no idea who they were dealing with. This Christmas, they would learn. I drove home with the pie cooling on the passenger seat like a joke that had gone stale. The neighborhood was already strung in white lights, wreaths on every door, inflatable reindeer swaying in the cold. When I opened my front door, the house answered with its usual winter complaint. A thin whistle through the old windows, a hiccup from the furnace before it settled into its low, steady hum. I set the pie on the counter and stood very still. In the kitchen window, my reflection stared back at me. Red sweater, careful lipstick, a woman who had prepared to be loved and was told politely to stay away. On the sill, Maria's photo caught a sliver of streetlight. Her smile had always been a kind of spine for me. Tonight it felt like a reminder. Worth isn't measured by how much you give away, her eyes seemed to say. It's measured by what you refuse to lose. I pulled the accordion folder from the hall closet, the one that had traveled with me through every tax season, every emergency. Tabs labeled in my tidy handwriting: Daniel and Lauren, tuition, house, miscellaneous. I cleared the table and poured everything out. Statements and receipts fanned across the wood like bird wings. I started with the obvious, the transfer I'd set up 2 winters ago when Daniel just needed a little help smoothing cash flow. A recurring ACH from Evergreen Credit Union to Summit Mortgage Services. Memo line: Mortgage Assist, Daniel. $2,350 on the 12th of every month. I traced the yellow highlighted line with my finger across 24 statements. $56,400. Next tab. Down payment. Certified cashier's check. 2 summers back. $48,000. I remembered the banker's face when I'd signed. The polite pause before she asked if I wanted to keep a little more in my savings, for cushion. I had smiled and said, my cushion is my son. Kitchen remodel, deposits to Red Elm Cabinets, Westline Stone, and a contractor named Ron who insisted on cash for the backsplash. $14,800. I could still hear Lauren's voice. Granite reads better than laminate, Mom. It sends a message. Car, 2 lump sums to Midway Motors when their lease buyout came due after Daniel lost his job for culture misalignment. $9,200. Kids' school, quarterly payments to Bay Ridge Academy. $3,250 x 6 equals $19,500. Utilities. HOA back dues that fell through the cracks. Ballet camp for Ava, soccer travel fees for Lucas, a replaced iPad, 2 orthodontist down payments, airfare for their 10th anniversary because memories matter. The notebook beside me filled with lines of ink. I added each column slowly, taking breath between the figures, refusing to rush past the weight of what they were. When I totaled it, the number looked like someone else's mistake. $161,870. Not counting the quiet things. Groceries slipped into their pantry when I visited, Target gift cards tucked into Daniel's coat, the anonymous donations to the school fundraiser basket that Lauren later posted about as if she'd curated it herself. I put my pen down and smoothed the page. It crinkled under my palm. I opened my laptop. The Evergreen portal blinked awake, blue and white and businesslike. Under transfers and payments, I found the line I knew I would: recurring external transfer, Summit Mortgage Services. Status: active. Next run: December 12th. I hovered over manage and felt a tremor in my chest. Not fear exactly, but something like it. Not because I couldn't survive without giving them money. Because for years, giving had been my language for love. Turning off the tap felt like going silent. I clicked cancel. A small window jumped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this transfer? I read the sentence twice, as if the screen were testing me. Yes. The word landed with a small, clean click. The line grayed out. I stared at it until my breath evened. Then I dialed. Evergreen Credit Union, this is Marta. Hello, Marta. My name is Clara Navarro. I need to end a few authorizations and remove some authorized users. Her voice warmed. Of course, Ms. Navarro. Let's get you secure and taken care of. We reset the online banking password. I had shared it once, in a panic, when Lauren couldn't figure out how to Zelle the piano teacher and it was time-sensitive. We reviewed recurring payments. The school account was separate, that I would address with the bursar tomorrow. But one line made me sit straighter. Cardholder, L. Navarro, authorized user. Please remove that card, I said. My hands didn't shake. Done, Marta answered. And for your security, we'll overnight a new card for you and issue a new number. Anything else today? I thought of the time Lauren borrowed my card for a tiny online order, and a $287 charge from a boutique appeared 2 hours later. I thought of the espresso machine gleaming in their kitchen. That will be all, thank you. When we hung up, the house felt a notch quieter. Not empty, clear. I made tea and began building a binder. Not the accordion chaos I'd lived with, but a lawyer's book, tabs by year, plastic sleeves, a crisp index. I slipped each receipt inside like a page in a story. On a title sheet, I wrote, Contributions to Daniel and Lauren, 2020, present. And beneath it, in smaller letters that made something inside me settle. For my records. For the truth. At 9:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. Lauren. Hey. Could you please Venmo $1,200 to the school auction committee? We pledged a platinum sponsor table, and they need it tonight to print programs. So sorry to ask late. You're the best. A month ago, I would have apologized for the time and sent the money before the kettle boiled. I let the message sit, its cheerfulness like perfume over something rotten. 5 minutes later. Also, can you cover property tax? Daniel's bonus hits after the first. We'll settle up. Promise. Promise. I could have wallpapered a room with their promises. I typed, erased, typed again. In the end, I sent 2 sentences, formal as a door closing. Hi Lauren. I won't be making additional payments on your household expenses. Please adjust accordingly. Clara. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared. What? Is this a joke? We're in the middle of Q4, everything is due. You can't just. Another set of dots. Let's not be rash. We can talk when you've calmed down. I set the phone face down. Calm, I thought, sipping my tea, has finally arrived. Before bed, I stood in the doorway of the spare room and switched on the light. The room had been storage since Maria passed. Boxes of her scarves, my quilting fabric, a lamp that needed rewiring. I carried in the new binder and set it on the desk. On the wall above, the corkboard was blank. I pinned a single index card at the center and wrote December in thick black ink. Under it, I added 3 lines. Cancel transfers. Done. School/bursar. Tomorrow. Talk to an attorney. Research. The last line surprised me as I wrote it. Not because I intended to sue anyone, but because the very thought shifted how I saw myself. Not as a benefactor with empty pockets, but as a person with boundaries and a plan. At 10:31, a voicemail from Daniel slid in. His voice was soft, careful. Mom, Lauren says you sent a confusing text. Let's not do anything drastic. We'll figure out Christmas. I love you. I let it go to sleep with the phone. Morning came clean and cold. I called the school and asked for the bursar. A young man with a bright voice explained that Daniel and Lauren were on the family sponsor plan. And you're the guarantor, he added, as if I already knew. I didn't. Remove me, I said gently. Effective today. We'll need the parents to. We'll need the parents to. I'm the one paying. Or I was. I kept my tone even. Send me the form to revoke authorization. I'll sign today. He hesitated, then sighed. I'll email it over. When I hung up, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a camel coat, phone in hand, irritation already set in her posture. Elaine, I realized. Lauren's mother. We'd met 3 times. She always smelled like peonies and opinions. I opened the door an inch. Elaine. Clara. She smiled without warmth. Let's talk woman to woman. You've created a situation. Behind her, a black SUV idled at the curb. I could just make out a man in the passenger seat. Richard. Of course. I stepped back just enough to make the boundary clear. If this is about Christmas, Daniel has my answer. Her smile sharpened. Christmas is decor. This is about money. You don't want to embarrass Daniel, do you? People talk when bills are late. There it was, the thing they valued, said aloud. I let the quiet stretch until it became its own kind of reply. I'm not funding your atmosphere, I said. Tell your printer to make do with fewer sponsors. She blinked, just once, as if someone had flicked the lights. Then she leaned in, lowered her voice. Be reasonable. You've built a narrative where you're essential. You're not. Someone always steps in. Then let them, I said and closed the door. My heart hammered against my ribs, then slowed, then steadied. I walked to the corkboard and added a 4th line. Save every message. Ongoing. On the counter, the pie sat under its foil, untouched. I slid it into the oven, set the heat low, and imagined the crust warming, the filling loosening, the house filling with brown sugar and butter. Not for them. For me. By noon, the bursar's form had arrived. I printed, signed, scanned. The pen moved easily over my name. When I clicked send, a small thrill braided through my chest. It felt nothing like loss. My phone chimed again, a new message from an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Navarro, this is Patricia, lifestyle editor at the City Journal. Hoping to speak about your family's generous sponsorship at Bay Ridge. I stared at the screen, and for the first time since the kitchen, I laughed. A light, short sound, the kind that shakes off dust. I tucked the binder under my arm and grabbed my keys. If they wanted to play in public, we would. But on my terms. I took the binder with me like armor. The law office was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building that smelled faintly of paper and lemon oil. Frost feathered the corners of the windows, and a poinsettia sat on the receptionist's desk, leaves lacquered and defiant. When Ms. Cho came out to greet me, tiny, crisp, a silver pen tucked behind one ear, she shook my hand as if we were about to sign a pact. Ms. Navarro, she said. Let's get you out of the storm. Her office was warm and orderly. I set the binder on her table and opened to the index. She glanced at it, then at me, her eyebrows lifting in what looked like respect. You did my job for me. I've been doing a lot of jobs, I said. This one's new. We went page by page. The mortgage transfers, the down payment, the remodel, the car, the school fees, the smaller things that made a life look smooth from the outside. Ms. Cho listened without the face people make when they think you're foolish. When I finished, she steepled her fingers. 2 lanes, she said. Recovery and boundaries. Recovery would mean we argue these were loans, not gifts. Do you have anything in writing? Texts promising to pay you back, or as soon as the bonus hits. I pulled out my phone and scrolled. Dozens of messages blinked up. We'll settle up next month. Promise. Can you float it? Bonus is delayed. You're saving us. We'll make you whole after Q4. I slid the screen across. She nodded. Helpful. Not definitive without a promissory note, but helpful. We could file a demand letter. It would be messy. I don't want their house, I said. I want my life back. Then boundaries, she said simply. 3 letters. 1 to your bank and credit accounts. Revoke any third-party authorization. Refuse verbal approvals. 2 to the school. Revoke guarantor status and any permission to list you as a sponsor. 3 to your son and daughter-in-law. A formal notice that you will not fund their household, that future solicitations are unwelcome, and that any use of your name in fundraising or journalism requires written consent. She paused, weighing the next line. And 1 optional, a general notice to their HOA and utilities that you are not a party to their accounts, to stop the urgent calls that seem to find you. I felt something in my chest unclench. Can you draft them? Today, she said, already pulling a template onto her screen. We'll send certified. Keep everything. Her pen flicked. Also, don't get pulled into a public narrative you didn't author. If a journalist calls, redirect to email and respond once, with facts. No adjectives. Funny you should say that, I murmured, and mentioned the message from Patricia at the City Journal. Ms. Cho's mouth quirked. Then you'll set the terms. Do it in writing. Imagine a judge reading it someday. I left with copies in a crisp manila envelope, the air outside colder and easier to breathe. The street noise sounded different, as if someone had turned down a static channel I'd lived with for years. At home, I made coffee and opened my laptop. Patricia's email sat in my inbox now, formal and bright. We're running a holiday feature on family sponsorship at Bay Ridge, multi-generational generosity, building legacy, etc. Would love to discuss your role and perhaps a photo? Legacy. The word rolled around my mouth like a marble. I replied, Hi Patricia. Thanks for reaching out. For accuracy, I have revoked my guarantor status at Bay Ridge effective today and will not be listed as a sponsor. Any prior contributions were personal support, not part of a family foundation. I do not consent to the use of my name or likeness in promotional materials or features. If you intend to print assertions about my ongoing sponsorship, please let me know your deadline. I will provide documentation showing cessation and totals to date. I'm happy to speak on background about the invisible labor of older women subsidizing adult children, if your piece is truly about that. Otherwise, please direct inquiries about the Navarro household budget to Daniel and Lauren. Best. Clara Navarro. I hit send and sat back. The oven hummed. The house, mine, smelled faintly of cinnamon from the pie I'd warmed the night before. I let the quiet settle like a shawl across my shoulders. At 2:06 p.m., Daniel called. I let it ring through to voicemail, then listened. Mom, I heard you. Talk to the school? Lauren's upset. It's a bad time to make changes. We'll make it up to you, okay? Let us get through the holidays. Please don't make a scene. A scene. The word pricked. I pictured my binder, neat as a ledger. Scenes are what you make when you've been ignored in prose. Lauren texted 5 minutes later. Elaine says she tried to stop by and you were curt. We're all under stress. Could you be a team player for 2 weeks? We'll revisit in January. Then, a second. Also, Patricia from City Journal is doing a piece that will reflect well on all of us. Please don't overcomplicate. I typed and deleted. Finally. No more money. No more quotes. Wishing you a peaceful holiday. I added a snowflake emoji because it felt like a stone with a smile drawn on it. The doorbell chimed again after dark. When I checked the peephole, a bouquet stared back, white roses and holly, the card even whiter. From Daniel and Lauren. We love you. Let's be festive. I set the flowers on the porch bench, tucked into the cold like an apology that couldn't come inside, and closed the door. Patricia replied just before 9. Hi Clara. Thank you for the clarity. Elaine had pitched this as a 3 generations giving back story and implied ongoing Navarro Foundation support. Appreciate your note. Are you comfortable if I attribute to you, on the record, I am no longer sponsoring Bay Ridge or my son's household and have withdrawn my name from all materials? I read it twice. Behind her sentence, I could hear how the story had been offered. a glossy tableau where I played the benefactor as long as I didn't claim a seat at the table. They wanted my profile in the program. They didn't want my chair at dinner. Yes, I wrote. You may use that sentence, accurate as written. I attached a scan of the Bursa form and my bank's cancellation confirmation, redacting account numbers but leaving the dates and signatures bright as bells. 10 minutes later, another email. Short, almost sheepish. Off the record. This happens more than you think. Thank you for documenting. I slept like a person who had finally put her purse down. Morning, a wind came skittering off the sound and rattled the old panes. I brewed tea and opened the envelope Ms. Cho had couriered overnight. 4 letters, crisp, signed. I carried them to the post office, the kind of errand that used to belong to someone else in my mind, some future version of me who had time for tidy things. The clerk stamped each green card and slid them back with practiced thumps. Certified. 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 When I turned from the counter, I saw a familiar face at the self-serve kiosk. Trina, another Bay Ridge grandmother, usually chatty, always kind. Her smile faltered when she recognized me, then sharpened into sympathy. You okay? She asked softly. There's talk. Let them talk, I said, smiling back. Say I sent letters. Her eyes sparkled. Good. By afternoon, the group text I'd been drafted into years ago, Bay Ridge Brights, lit up like a switchboard. Screenshots pinged in from 3 directions. People were posting photos of sponsor boards being reprinted without my name. Lauren's friend Kira dropped a line about miscommunications and older relatives needing clarity. I saved everything into a folder marked noise and felt oddly lighter with each chime. At 5:43, Patricia called. I took it. Clara, quick check, she said. We're balancing quotes. Elaine claims you're rethinking support, not ending it. I'll run your sentence as is, with documents. There's also a separate item. They've invited us to the Bay Ridge Winter Showcase for photos. If you plan to attend, I want to be fair. I wasn't invited, I said. But thank you for asking. A beat. Understood. Her voice softened. For what it's worth, the piece is shifting. It looks less like legacy and more like labor. After we hung up, I stood in the doorway of the spare room again. The corkboard glowed gently in the lamplight, ink neat under December. I added 2 new lines. Mail certified letters. Done. Prepare statement for any further press. Drafted. I set a clean index card beside the first and wrote January at the top. Under it. Choose where I go for Christmas. Invite the grandkids to my house after New Year's. Without their parents, if needed. The pen stopped on that last line. I thought of Ava's gap-toothed grin, Lucas's endless questions, the way they raced to the door when I used to arrive with a casserole and a bag of library books. I thought of teaching Ava to braid dough, of showing Lucas how to oil a squeaky hinge. Love is not a cash transfer. It's time. It's chairs pulled close. It's pie, still warm, cooling on the counter without anyone to slice it. I set the pen down and went to the kitchen. I plated a piece of pecan pie for myself and another on a second plate I didn't need, because rituals matter even when the chairs are empty. The fork touched the crust and it flaked like good decisions. They had said I wasn't welcome. They had welcomed my money. I was done betraying myself to be invited. Tomorrow, there would be ripples. There would be calls, maybe headlines dressed as holiday cheer. But on my table lay the thing that would carry me through the noise. A ledger that finally told the truth, and a woman who had reclaimed the right to sign only for herself. The first ripple came faster than I expected. By Sunday morning, the City Journal piece was live. I hadn't gone searching for it. My neighbor Evelyn knocked on my door at 8 sharp, clutching the folded paper like it was evidence from a crime scene. Clara, she said, eyes wide. Have you seen this? On page 5, under the lifestyle banner, ran a glossy feature titled, Families of Means, the Tradition of Giving at Bay Ridge Academy. The lead photo stopped me cold. Daniel, Lauren, Elaine, and Richard, all framed in front of the Bay Ridge Auditorium stage, the school crest gleaming behind them. My grandchildren, Ava and Lucas, stood in front, both holding foil-wrapped poinsettias. Smiling, unaware. But what made my throat tighten was the caption. The Navarro family, longtime sponsors of Bay Ridge, continuing a tradition of generosity led by matriarch Clara Navarro. They had used my name. The article itself danced in polite prose about multi-generational sacrifice, family values, and sustaining excellence. Halfway down, a pull quote. Clara has always believed in investing in the future. We're proud to carry her spirit forward. Elaine Jenkins, mother-in-law. I set the paper down slowly, careful not to tear it. Evelyn hovered, lips pressed thin. That's not right, Clara. You told me. I told them, I corrected softly. They printed anyway. I thanked her and closed the door. Then I went to my desk, opened the noise folder, and added a new subfolder, Media. I scanned the article, uploaded it, highlighted the caption and the pull quote. Evidence. At 9:12 a.m., my phone rang. Daniel. I let it buzz. At 9:13, Lauren. At 9:15, Elaine herself. By 9:20, a voicemail arrived. Lauren's voice, sweetened like tea with too much sugar. Clara, don't overreact. It's just PR. Everyone knows you've been generous. It reflects well on you. If you'd been at the showcase, you could have seen how much people respect you. Let's not make a fuss. Respect. A word they used the way other people used wrapping paper. Glossy, disposable, covering whatever lay beneath. By 10, I was at Ms. Cho's office again. She read the article with a face that barely moved, only her pen tapping against the desk. They ignored your written notice, she said. That's misrepresentation. We'll draft a cease and desist today. I don't want their apology in the paper, I said. I want them to stop writing my story for me. You'll get both, she replied. She typed as I spoke, her language sharp and surgical. Use of my client's name and likeness without consent. Material misrepresentation of sponsorship. Retraction demanded within 72 hours. When she was done, she leaned back. They're baiting you, Clara. Counting on your silence. Don't give it to them. I walked out lighter. For the first time, someone else carried a piece of the burden. That evening, I made soup, lentil with garlic, the kind Maria had always called food that fixes you. Halfway through chopping carrots, I thought of Ava and Lucas. Would they read the paper someday and believe I had abandoned them? Would they think my absence at Christmas meant I didn't want them? The knife stilled against the board. No. I would not let Lauren and Elaine script that lie. I sat down at the kitchen table, pulled a fresh pad of paper, and began drafting a letter. Not to the adults who had twisted things beyond repair. To the children. Dear Ava and Lucas. Grandma loves you very much. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that aren't fair, and sometimes people say things that aren't true. But love doesn't disappear just because someone isn't in the room. I will always be your grandma. I will always cheer for you, listen to your stories, and save you the biggest slice of pie. After Christmas, I want you to come spend a weekend with me. We'll have our own celebration. Books, games, cinnamon rolls. Just us. Love, Grandma. I sealed 2 envelopes, each with their name in big block letters, and tucked them into the binder. By Monday morning, the article had already spread. Parents in the Brights group chat were congratulating the Navarros on their generosity. Elaine replied with heart emojis, basking in reflected light. Lauren uploaded a polished photo to Instagram. Her in a velvet dress, Daniel in a suit, kids in matching tartan. Caption. So proud to honor tradition. Thanks to Mom Navarro for inspiring us every day. My phone lit up with tags. I ignored them. Instead, I brewed coffee, opened Patricia's email thread, and attached the scans of the article with a single line. Unauthorized use of my name, after written notice. Retraction requested. For your records. Her reply was swift. Understood. Off the record, I'll tell you, this is not going to end well for them. That night, I unplugged the landline. The calls had grown more insistent. Daniel left a final voicemail before midnight, his voice brittle. Mom, this has gone too far. Pull the plug on the lawyer. Lauren's parents are furious. The school board is upset. You don't want this fight. I sat in the dark, listening once, then deleting. He was wrong. I did want this fight. Because it wasn't about money anymore. It was about the right to exist in my own family without paying rent in silence. I walked into the spare room, where the corkboard glowed under the desk lamp. December's card now bristled with lines. I wrote a new one. Cease and desist to City Journal. In progress. Letters to Ava and Lucas. Sealed. Plan Christmas Day. For myself. Then, below in smaller letters. Prepare for their retaliation. Because they would retaliate. Elaine was too practiced at control. Lauren too fluent in performance. Daniel, my Daniel, too afraid to be caught in between. But I was no longer between anything. I was outside, watching from clear ground. When the first snow of December began to fall, I stood at the window and watched flakes catch on the glass. Quiet, certain, unstoppable. The storm was coming. This time, I wasn't the one bracing for it. The cease and desist went out on Tuesday morning, certified and tracked. By Tuesday evening, Elaine had already fired her countershot. A new post appeared on Bay Ridge's parent forum, the kind that pretended to be informative but carried the weight of a dagger. So saddened to hear that sometimes older relatives become confused about their role. We're grateful for the years of help Clara gave, but families grow, and priorities change. Let's be kind in how we speak about transitions. The replies gushed sympathy. You're handling this with such grace, Elaine. Every family has challenges. You're showing real leadership. Grace. Leadership. Pretty ribbons tied around exclusion. I screen captured every word. Evidence. Noise. On Thursday, Patricia called again. Clara, just so you know, the paper's running a correction. Bottom of page 2 in tomorrow's edition. Contrary to earlier reporting, Clara Navarro is no longer a sponsor of Bay Ridge Academy. We regret the error. It's small, but it's public. Relief washed through me, chased by anger. Small. Regret the error. As though they'd misprinted the color of a dress, not my entire identity. Still, it was a dent in Elaine's polished shield. By Friday, Daniel showed up at my door. He didn't call first. Just stood there on my porch, hands jammed in his coat pockets, cheeks raw from the cold. Mom, can I come in? I let him. He smelled of exhaustion and too much coffee. Lauren's parents are furious, he said as soon as we Saturday. They say you're embarrassing the family. The school board's annoyed. And Lauren thinks you're sabotaging us. I poured him tea, the way I always had, even when his words carried splinters. I'm protecting myself. He rubbed his eyes. Why now? I gestured toward the stack of bank statements on the counter. Because 5 years is long enough. Because you told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas. His face tightened. I didn't want to say that. You know how Lauren's parents are. I know, I cut in. I've seen. I've paid. I've listened. And now I've stopped. Silence stretched. He looked smaller somehow, hunched, a boy caught cheating on a test. Mom, I don't know how to fix this. By remembering who your mother is, I said softly. Not a wallet. Not an embarrassment. A person. Who raised you. He left without finishing his tea. Christmas Eve came cold and sharp, the air smelling of pine and chimney smoke. For the first time in decades, I had no obligations. No casserole cooling, no envelope of checks in my purse, no house full of noise that wasn't mine. At first, the quiet unnerved me. Then I realized, it was freedom. I cooked for myself. A small roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted carrots. I baked a single pecan pie, the same one they'd told me was too heavy for Lauren's family's tastes. I set the table with Maria's china, polished the silver, poured a glass of red wine. Halfway through the meal, I lit a candle by Maria's photo. "Merry Christmas, love," I whispered. For once, the ache of her absence felt less like loss and more like presence, her steady approval in the silence. After dinner, I carried 2 wrapped packages to the spare room. Books for Ava and Lucas, their names written in looping script. I placed them beside the envelopes with my letters. After New Year's, I'd mail them myself. They would know Grandma remembered. At 9 o'clock, the phone buzzed. Not a call, an onslaught of messages. From Lauren. "Unbelievable. You're not here, but you're still ruining Christmas. The correction embarrassed us. People are whispering. You couldn't just let us have one nice night?" From Elaine. "A public spat is beneath you. Withdraw the lawyer. Apologize. If you don't, we'll tell everyone you're unstable. The narrative will be ours." From Daniel. "Please, Mom. Please stop. You're tearing the family apart." I set the phone down without replying. Let them rage into the void. Because here was the truth. I wasn't tearing the family apart. I was stepping out of the cage they'd built, and the noise was the sound of bars breaking. At midnight, I stepped onto the porch. Snow drifted down, soft and steady, muffling the world in white. Across the street, neighbors laughed, their windows glowing. Families gathered, unpolished, unposed, together. I thought of Ava and Lucas. Thought of the weekend I would have with them soon. Movies on the couch, hot chocolate with too many marshmallows, the kind of love that doesn't need to be printed in the paper to exist. I lifted my face to the snow and whispered, "Merry Christmas" to me. And for the first time in years, I meant it. But the storm hadn't passed. On December 27th, the City Journal ran another piece. This one not glossy, not lifestyle. Local news. Dispute over sponsorship raises questions about Bay Ridge transparency. The article quoted Patricia, carefully neutral, detailing the correction, the conflicting claims, the fact that my name had been used without consent. It mentioned legal correspondence, and family tensions spilling into public view. And buried in the 5th paragraph, one sentence that changed the air. According to documents reviewed by the Journal, Clara Navarro contributed more than $160,000 to her son's household and related expenses since 2018. The number was out. The curtain had dropped. By noon, my phone was lighting up, not with Lauren or Elaine this time, but with neighbors, old friends, even Evelyn again at the door. "Clara, is it true? That much?" I didn't deny it. I didn't explain. I just smiled, tired and steady. "Yes. And it's over now." Inside, I pinned another card to the corkboard. January. Spend weekend with Ava and Lucas. Keep binder safe. Let the truth breathe. Because sometimes you don't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes the truth, once released, carries its own voice. And mine was finally free. The week after Christmas was when the storm truly began. At first, it was subtle. A neighbor hesitating a moment too long before waving. A friend from church texting to say she'd heard things and wanted to check in. The kind of ripples that meant Elaine's circle had already begun whispering. Then it became louder. On December 29th, the Bay Ridge Parents Association email list, never subtle, arrived in my inbox. In light of recent confusion, we'd like to reaffirm our gratitude to the Jenkins family for their continued generosity. Sometimes narratives get twisted, but we know who our true pillars are. Not my name this time. Not even Lauren and Daniel's. Just Elaine and Richard Jenkins, recast as the benefactors. My $160,000 erased with one polite paragraph. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then I printed the email, slid it into the binder, and wrote across the page in red ink, "Revision. Erasure. Evidence." On New Year's Eve, The doorbell rang just after dark. I opened it to find Elaine herself standing on my porch, wrapped in a fur-collared coat, her lipstick perfect, her smile sharp. Behind her, Lauren hovered, arms folded, phone in hand. "Clara," Elaine said smoothly. "We need to talk." I didn't invite them in. I stepped onto the porch instead, the cold biting at my cheeks. "This public feud," Elaine continued, her breath puffing white in the night air. "It's beneath all of us. You've embarrassed yourself. You've embarrassed Daniel. You've embarrassed those poor children." My hands curled inside my coat pockets. "I've spoken only the truth. You're the ones spinning tales." Lauren cut in, her tone brittle. "Do you even realize what you've done? People are asking questions. Sponsors are nervous. The school is worried about financial irregularities. We could lose everything." "You mean lose face," I said quietly. Elaine's eyes narrowed. "If you cared about Daniel, you'd withdraw your lawyer. You'd issue a statement that this has all been a misunderstanding, a lapse in communication. That you're old, maybe tired, and things got confused." There it was. The line they'd been circling toward all month. Paint me as unstable, as senile, as irrelevant. I met her gaze head-on. "I may be tired, but I am not confused. And I am not old enough to let you write me out of my own story." Lauren's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at it, then smirked. "You'll regret this, Clara. Patricia isn't the only journalist in town. Stories can be told more than one way." "Then tell yours," I said, turning toward the door. "And I'll tell mine." I closed it firmly, their voices muffled into the night. The next morning, January 1st, the retaliation hit. The Spokane Daily, a smaller paper, ran a piece under community concerns. "Local woman's erratic behavior raises questions." The article quoted anonymous sources close to the family, who claimed I had been forgetful, emotionally volatile, and fixated on money. It suggested I had fabricated contributions, and that stress may be affecting her clarity. Fabricated. As though the checks, the transfers, the receipts in my binder were figments of imagination. I sat at the table with my coffee growing cold, the paper spread in front of me, my hands steady even as my chest burned. I circled every line in red, then added the article to the binder. At the bottom of the corkboard, I tacked a new card. Counterattack. Collect all public lies. Prepare my own record. Choose the moment. Because the moment was coming. That afternoon, Daniel came again. This time he didn't knock politely, he pounded. When I opened the door, he stepped inside without waiting. His face was pale, his hair unkempt, his voice ragged. "Mom, what are you doing?" he shouted. "Do you have any idea what you've unleashed? My in-laws are threatening lawsuits, the school board is panicking, and now the Daily is calling you unstable. Do you think this helps me?" I closed the door calmly behind him. "Do you think it helped me to pay your mortgage while your wife told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas?" He flinched. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that." My voice was quiet but sharp. "You wanted my money. You didn't want me. And now that the money is gone, you're realizing which one mattered to you." He sagged against the wall, suddenly looking younger, almost boyish. "I don't know how to fix this." "You can start by telling the truth," I said. His eyes darted away. "Lauren won't let me. Her parents won't let me. They're saying if I don't back them, they'll cut us off socially. They'll ruin me." "They already have," I said gently. "The difference is, I've stopped letting them ruin me too." For a moment, I thought he might cry. Instead, he pushed off the wall, muttered, "Happy New Year," and left. The days that followed were quiet, but not with peace. Quiet like the eye of a storm. I knew better than to think Elaine and Lauren were finished. They were regrouping, reloading. I spent the time in preparation. I copied every document in the binder, bank statements, receipts, texts, articles. I scanned them onto a flash drive and mailed another copy to Ms. Cho. I printed packets, neat and orderly, each one labeled, The Truth. 12 of them. One for each person I knew Elaine and Lauren would try to convince. On January 5th, the invitation arrived. It was slid under my door, heavy cardstock with gold edging. You are cordially invited to the Jenkins family winter reception, January 7th, 6 p.m., Kendall Yards residence. At the bottom, in scripted italics, an evening of fellowship, community, and gratitude. Gratitude. I almost laughed. Of course it wasn't really an invitation. It was a message. Come if you dare. Watch us reclaim the narrative. Watch us make you small. I tucked the card into my binder, then glanced at the 12 packets stacked neatly on my desk. An evening of fellowship? I thought. Very well. Let's fellowship with the truth. The night of January 7th fell crisp and clear, the kind of winter night when the stars burn sharp and merciless overhead. I dressed carefully, black wool coat, pearl earrings, and Maria's silver brooch pinned near my collar. Not extravagant, but dignified. I wanted no one to mistake me for anything other than what I was. A woman who belonged. The 12 packets sat neatly in my leather briefcase, each labeled The Truth. Bank transfers, receipts, screenshots, and a copy of the City Journal correction. Facts. Irrefutable. At 6 sharp, I pulled up to Kendall Yards. Their house blazed with light, cars lining the street, laughter already spilling from the windows. The sound of celebration, but brittle, like glass that might shatter under the wrong touch. I crossed the icy walkway, my heels clicking against the stone. The door stood wide open, warm light pouring out, and just inside, Lauren waited. Her velvet dress shimmered emerald under the chandelier, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Clara," she said, breathless but tight. "I didn't think you'd actually come." "Of course you didn't," I replied, stepping past her into the house. The living room was staged like a magazine spread, gold garland twined along the staircase, a string quartet in the corner playing something cheerful and meaningless. Guests filled the room, glasses in hand, chatter buzzing. I recognized parents from Bay Ridge, business acquaintances of the Jenkinses, even Patricia from the City Journal, notebook tucked discreetly under her arm. Elaine stood near the fireplace, draped in sapphire silk, commanding the room with practiced poise. When she saw me, her smile froze. For a beat, the air tightened. Then she raised her voice, smooth as cream. "Clara, how lovely you could join us." Heads turned. Conversations faltered. Every eye swung toward me. I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. For nearly an hour, I let them pretend. I moved through the room with my glass of water, listening as Elaine regaled a circle of guests with stories about family legacy and the importance of tradition. Lauren hovered nearby, laughing too loudly, her hand clutching Daniel's arm like a leash. People glanced at me sideways. Curious, wary. They'd read the articles, heard the whispers. They didn't know what to believe. At 7:30, Elaine tapped her glass with a spoon. The quartet quieted, the room hushed, and she stepped forward to address the crowd. "Friends, neighbors, colleagues," she began, voice rich and polished. "We gather tonight to celebrate not just another year at Bay Ridge, but the enduring legacy of generosity that sustains our community." Polite applause. She gestured toward Daniel and Lauren, who smiled stiffly. "My daughter and son-in-law," Elaine continued, "carry forward a spirit of giving passed down from their family. Despite recent miscommunications," a ripple of chuckles, "we want to reaffirm tonight that their commitment, and ours, has never wavered." More applause, louder this time. Elaine basked in it, her eyes gleaming. She raised her glass. To family. To tradition. To generosity. Glasses lifted, crystal chimed. And that was my cue. I set my briefcase on the marble sideboard with a deliberate click. The sound cut through the hum like a gavel. Heads turned. Elaine's smile faltered. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying clearly. Since we're toasting generosity, I thought I'd share a few specifics. A hush fell. The quartet exchanged glances and lowered their bows. I opened the briefcase and withdrew the first packet, placing it on the nearest table. Then another, and another, until a dozen sat in neat stacks. Guests leaned forward, curious, uneasy. These, I said, are records of every dollar I've contributed to Daniel and Lauren's household over the last 5 years. Mortgage payments, down payment, renovations, tuition, utilities. More than $160,000. Every cent documented. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Patricia's pen moved swiftly against her notebook. Elaine stepped forward, voice sharp. Clara, this is not the time. This is exactly the time, I interrupted, calm but firm. Because you've told this community a story. A story where you and your family are the benefactors, and I'm the confused old woman who doesn't know what she's saying. Tonight, I'm setting the record straight. Gasps. Eyes darted between us. Lauren's voice cracked, shrill. This is slander. You're humiliating us in front of everyone. No, I said, sliding a bank statement toward the nearest guest. This is evidence. People began flipping through the packets, brows furrowing, lips tightening. I watched their expressions change as the numbers stacked, undeniable. One man cleared his throat. Elaine. This shows Clara paid the mortgage for years. Is that true? Elaine's poise wavered. Well, Clara was helping as mothers do, but it was voluntary. Voluntary. I echoed. I was told I wasn't welcome at Christmas, but my money always was. That's not voluntary. That's exploitation. A sharp silence. The kind that follows a blow. Daniel finally spoke, his voice hollow. Mom, please. I looked at him, my heart aching despite everything. You asked me once why now. This is why. Because they've taken my love, turned it into money, and then tried to erase me. I won't be erased. The room was still. Then Patricia stepped forward, her voice measured but cutting. Would anyone like to go on record clarifying these discrepancies? Elaine's face flushed crimson. She opened her mouth, but no words came. I closed the briefcase, the echo sharp in the silence. Enjoy the rest of your evening, I said. It's the last one you'll enjoy at my expense. I walked to the door, the crowd parting like a tide. Behind me, voices rose. Accusations, questions, whispers turning sharp. The sound of a facade cracking. The winter air hit my face as I stepped outside, cold and clean. I breathed deep, steady. The storm had broken. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the one left standing in the wreckage. The morning after the reception, I woke with a calm I hadn't felt in years. No dread about the next bill, no weight of secret sacrifices pressing down on my chest. Just stillness. The phone, however, was another story. By 7 a.m., it was buzzing non-stop. Texts, voicemails, emails. Neighbors, old colleagues, even women from church. Clara, I had no idea. You were brave last night. I always suspected Elaine was more show than substance. Each message was like a breeze clearing stale air from my lungs. I brewed coffee and sat by the window, watching snow drift down onto the street. Across town, the Jenkins house would be heavy with silence, its lights dimmer than usual. And then Patricia's email arrived. Clara, thank you again for allowing me to witness last night. We'll be running a follow-up piece on hidden labor in families, and the line between support and exploitation. I'll include documentation you've provided and your statement. It will not be flattering to the Jenkinses. Are you comfortable being quoted directly? I smiled into my coffee. 4 years, I'd been quoted only in whispers, twisted into someone else's version. Now, finally, my own voice would be printed. Yes, Patricia, I typed. You may quote me directly. Love should not come with a price tag. A mother is not a bank account. Respect means more than checks ever could. By noon, the fallout began. First, the Brights group chat exploded. Parents who had once fawned over Elaine's grace now exchanged barbed messages. Did you see the documents? $160,000? That's not just helping, that's carrying. And after all that, she wasn't welcome for Christmas? Shameful. I don't want my name linked with theirs. Bay Ridge needs to vet its narratives. I scrolled, saving screenshots, each one a tiny vindication. Then came the calls. Evelyn dropped by with fresh muffins and gossip hot from the grocery store. Half the town's talking, Clara. They say Elaine's social circle is fractured. Some families are pulling their kids from the academy. Donors are demanding accountability. You lit a fire, dear. Her smile was wicked and warm all at once. That evening, Daniel showed up again. This time he knocked softly, almost timidly. I opened the door to find him looking wrecked, tie crooked, eyes shadowed, his posture slumped like a boy caught sneaking in past curfew. "Mom," he said quietly, "can I come in?" We sat at the kitchen table. I poured him tea. He didn't touch it. "It's all falling apart," he admitted. "Lauren's furious. Her parents are humiliated. Their friends aren't returning calls. The school is distancing itself. And me. I'm in the middle of the wreckage." I studied him carefully. "No, Daniel. You're not in the middle. You chose a side. 4 years, you stood by while they drained me, while they shut me out. This," I gestured to the mess swirling around us, "is the cost of silence." He dropped his head into his hands. "I don't know how to fix it." "You can start," I said softly, "by telling the truth. Out loud. Not just here." His shoulders trembled. "If I do that, Lauren will leave. I'll lose everything." I reached across the table, laying my hand gently on his. "Son, you've already lost more than you realize. You lost me. You lost respect. The only way back is through the truth." He didn't answer. His silence was its own kind of confession. 2 days later, Patricia's new article hit the stands. "When love becomes labor, the invisible costs of family support." My photo wasn't there. I'd declined, but my words were. Clear, steady, undeniable. The article outlined the evidence. 5 years of payments, more than $160,000, contrasted against my exclusion from Christmas dinner. It quoted neighbors, parents, even anonymous Bay Ridge staff who admitted Elaine had pushed for the legacy narrative. The Jenkins name, once polished and proud, now lay tarnished in black and white. At the market, I caught whispers as I walked past. Not about me. About them. Imagine using her money and then treating her like that. Elaine always was arrogant. Now everyone sees it. Poor Clara. At least she stood up for herself. For once, the weight of gossip wasn't on my shoulders. But not everyone was ready to surrender. That evening, my phone rang. It was Lauren. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was sharp, shaking with fury. "You've destroyed us, Clara. Do you understand? My parents are pariahs. Daniel's humiliated. And me. I've lost everything I built. Are you happy?" I kept my voice calm. "No, Lauren. I'm not happy. I'm relieved. There's a difference. You think people respect you now? They pity you. An old woman whining about money. That's your legacy." I smiled faintly, unseen. "My legacy is the truth. And it doesn't need your approval." She screamed something, inaudible, furious, and hung up. I set the phone down, my hands steady. That night, I returned to the corkboard in the spare room. January's card was filling fast. Weekend with Ava and Lucas. Pending. Keep binder safe. Ongoing. Truth published. Done. Jenkins fallout. Active. I added one more line. Rebuild my life. Because revenge, I realized, wasn't the endgame. Vindication was only the doorway. Beyond it lay something I hadn't dared imagine for years. Freedom. The next morning, I received a knock on the door. When I opened it, Ava and Lucas stood there, bundled in coats, cheeks flushed from the cold. Behind them, Daniel waited, hesitant. "Grandma," Ava cried, flinging her arms around me. Lucas barreled in after her, his grin wide. "We wanted to see you," Daniel said softly. "Lauren's furious, but I couldn't let them keep you from the kids." Tears pricked my eyes as I hugged my grandchildren tight. Their warmth, their laughter, it was worth more than every check I'd ever written. "Come in," I said, voice thick. "I've got pie." And for the first time in years, my house was filled with family again. Real family. For a brief moment, life returned to something close to normal. Ava and Lucas sprawled on my living room rug, building castles with the same old wooden blocks that had once belonged to Daniel. Their laughter rose like bells, sweet and uncomplicated. I brought them mugs of cocoa, too many marshmallows, just the way they liked, and for those hours, the world outside didn't exist. Daniel sat on the edge of the couch, watching. His smile was faint but real, the first I'd seen from him in months. He looked tired, older, as though the weight of other people's expectations had worn grooves into his face. "Thank you," he whispered, when the kids were too busy to listen. "For letting me bring them." I poured tea into his cup. "They're my grandchildren. You don't need permission to bring them here." His eyes flickered. "I did. From Lauren. From her parents. Everything's permission with them." I said nothing, letting the silence work. He sipped his tea, staring down at the steam. The following week, the consequences sharpened. Elaine and Richard's names vanished from the Bay Ridge donor board. A terse statement from the school read, "We are revising our sponsorship listings to reflect accurate contributions." No further details. On social media, their friends went quiet. Photos of soirees and charity luncheons disappeared, replaced by silence. A silence that speaks louder than any headline. Lauren raged online, cryptic posts about betrayal and toxic narratives, hashtags about family loyalty. But the likes dwindled. Even her carefully curated audience had grown weary. And Daniel. He looked like a man caught in a riptide. One evening, he came alone. No children this time, no excuses. Just him, standing at my door with his hands shoved into his pockets. "Mom," he said quietly, "I need to talk." I led him to the kitchen. He sat at the table where, for years, I'd signed checks for him, listened to his promises, and watched him walk out with my sacrifices in his pocket. He stared at the wood grain for a long time before speaking. "They're turning on me. Elaine, Richard, even Lauren. They say I should have controlled you. That if I'd been stronger, this never would have happened." My chest tightened. Controlled me. That's the word they used. His laugh was hollow. "As if you're a dog that needs a leash." I leaned forward. "And what did you say?" He lifted his gaze, raw and wet. "Nothing. Because part of me believed them. For years, I let them tell me you were just an obligation. A bank. Something to be managed. And I let them. I let them talk about you like you were beneath us. Beneath me." He broke then, the words tumbling. "And now everything's collapsing. The house is behind on payments. Lauren's shopping habits don't stop, her parents' money is tied up in their image, and I don't know how to breathe without their approval. I'm drowning, Mom." I reached across the table, placed my hand gently on his. "Daniel, you've been drowning for years. You just thought their applause was air." He closed his eyes, shoulders shaking. "I don't know how to fix it." "You start," I said softly, "by standing. By telling the truth, even when it costs you. Especially when it costs you." The next day, the breaking point arrived. Elaine and Richard hosted a damage control brunch at their home. An invitation-only affair meant to polish their image. I wasn't invited, of course. But word traveled fast in this town, and by afternoon, Evelyn was at my door with the details. They tried to spin it, she said, practically buzzing. Called you unstable again, said you'd misunderstood, that you resented Daniel's success. Success? I asked dryly. Evelyn grinned. That's when Daniel spoke. In front of everyone. He told them you'd paid the mortgage, the tuition, the renovations. Every word lined up with those packets you handed out. He told the truth. My breath caught. He did. Oh yes. Elaine's face. Priceless. Lauren stormed out. The room turned against them. Evelyn leaned in, lowering her voice. Your boy finally chose a side. That evening, Daniel came again. His face was pale, but his eyes were clearer than I'd seen in years. They won't forgive me, he said simply, standing in my doorway. Lauren's packing. Her parents say I've disgraced the family. They told me I'll never work in this town again. And what do you say? I asked. He took a shaky breath. I say they're right about one thing. I disgraced myself by choosing them over you for so long. But I can't live their way anymore. I won't. Tears stung my eyes. For years I had begged, silently, for this moment. Not repayment, not apology. Just recognition. I stepped aside. Come in, son. Sit. There's tea. We sat in the kitchen, steam rising from our cups, the house warm around us. Mom, he whispered, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I shook my head. Forgiveness isn't something you deserve. It's something given. And I gave it months ago. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean I'll ever fund your life again. I don't want your money, he said quickly, almost desperately. I want to rebuild. With you. With the kids. Without them. I studied him carefully, then nodded. Then rebuild. But this time, you do the work. Not me. His shoulders slumped with relief. For the first time, he looked like a man who might finally stand on his own. Later that night, after he left, I returned to the corkboard in the spare room. I wrote in bold letters across January's card. Breaking point reached. Daniel chose truth. Elaine and Richard isolated. Lauren unraveling. I pinned a new card beneath it. February. Help Daniel rebuild only with honesty. Protect Ava and Lucas. Live without apology. The storm had raged. The masks had cracked. And finally, the people who had silenced me were the ones left standing in the ruins of their own lies. Winter bled into February slowly, the snow stubborn on the sidewalks, the air sharp with frost. But inside my house, something new was blooming. For years, silence had been my constant companion. Silence at Christmas dinners I wasn't invited to. Silence when my name was erased from donations. Silence when my money spoke louder than my voice. Now, laughter returned. The kind that came from Ava and Lucas chasing each other through the hallways. Their boots leaving melting footprints on the floor. And Daniel, he didn't just visit. He stayed. At first just evenings, then weekends. By mid-February, he had moved into the guest room, while Lauren and her parents licked their wounds across town. He was different now. Humbled, stripped down. I'd catch him standing at the sink, washing dishes without being asked, or sitting quietly at the table with his laptop, paying bills himself for the first time in years. There was no pride in him anymore, no Jenkins polish. Just my son, trying to learn how to stand on his own 2 feet. Mom, he said one night over tea, do you think they'll ever forgive me? I sipped slowly before answering. Forgiveness isn't owed, Daniel. You'll have to earn trust back, one day at a time. Not with words, with actions. He nodded. I will. I promise. And for once, I believed him. As for Elaine and Richard, the fallout was merciless. The Bay Ridge Parents Association voted them out of leadership. Invitations dried up. Photos of them vanished from society pages. Even their beloved winter galas fizzled, attendance shrinking until the events were more empty chairs than guests. Lauren's fury burned bright on social media for weeks, but the audience dwindled. People grew tired of her bitterness, her endless refrains of betrayal. Eventually, her posts slowed, then stopped altogether. They hadn't lost their mansion, not yet. But they'd lost the thing they prized more than marble floors and chandeliers: admiration, respect, the power to dictate the narrative. And me. I didn't lift a finger. The truth did the work. By spring, Patricia's article had spread beyond Spokane. Bigger papers picked it up, reframing it as a cautionary tale: the hidden costs of family generosity. I became a quiet symbol, not of scandal, but of resistance. Letters arrived in my mailbox from strangers who saw themselves in my story. I thought I was alone, but I've been paying for my son's house for 10 years and he still treats me like I'm a burden. Thank you for standing up. It gave me courage to say no. You reminded me that dignity is worth more than money. I kept every letter in a shoebox under my bed. Proof that even pain, when spoken aloud, can help someone else find their spine. And then came the day I'd been waiting for. It was late March, the first hints of green pushing through the frost. Ava and Lucas were sprawled on my rug again, arguing good-naturedly over a board game. Daniel sat nearby, sipping tea. "Grandma," Ava said suddenly, looking up, "are you coming to my school recital next month?" My chest tightened. "If I'm invited." She frowned, confused. "Of course you're invited. Why wouldn't you be?" I glanced at Daniel. He met my gaze steadily. "She'll be there," he said firmly. "Front row." And just like that, a circle that had been broken for years began to close. On Easter Sunday, Daniel stood in church beside me, not across the aisle with the Jenkinses. The congregation noticed. Whispers followed us out the door, but this time they weren't about shame. They were about change. Later, over ham and roasted carrots at my table, Daniel raised his glass of water. "To new beginnings," he said. I lifted mine. "To honesty." The children clinked their juice glasses with us, giggling. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. I still kept the binder though. The corkboard, too. Not out of bitterness, but as a record. A reminder. When you've been erased once, you learn to guard your story carefully. But I no longer added cards for battles. Now I wrote plans. April. Plant tomatoes in the garden. Take Ava and Lucas to the lake. Enroll in painting class at the community center. Life, not survival. As spring turned to summer, I watched Elaine and Richard fade from relevance. Their name, once heavy in this town, now carried only whispers of scandal. Lauren filed for divorce quietly, her fury gone cold. She moved closer to her parents, retreating into their shrinking world. Daniel stayed. With me. With the kids. With honesty. He took a new job, smaller pay, less glamour, but his. He managed his bills, cooked his meals, learned how to live without applause. One night in July, as fireflies blinked in the yard, he sat beside me on the porch. "Mom," he said quietly, "thank you for not giving up on me. Even when I gave up on you." I squeezed his hand. "Mothers don't give up. We just stop being banks." He laughed softly, a Raol laugh this time. And so the story ended not with revenge, but with reclamation. I had been told I wasn't welcome. I had been used, erased, silenced. But I had spoken. I had stood. I had refused to disappear. And in the end, that was enough. Because love, Raol love, doesn't need a checkbook. It needs truth, presence, and the courage to say, "I will not be erased." And I never was again.